Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions, here to do another This Is Us Rewatch video, this time covering Season 1, Episode 9, The Trip, which covers the aftermath of Randall learning the truth about how long his mother has known his biological father. This episode actually turned out to be not quite as good as I remembered it. The adult Randall storyline in this episode remained excellent, and it gave Milo Ventimiglia a chance to interact with his adult children, specifically Randall, which was definitely fun. It's definitely a rare occurrence in this series. In fact, I can only recall it happening 3 times to my knowledge. We'll get to how that took place exactly a little bit later. Also excellent was the past storyline, which involved Jack and Rebecca grappling with young Randall wanting to know his true identity and who his parents are. What wasn't so great was everything else about the episode. I didn't particularly care for Kevin's thread. It didn't do his character any favors. Olivia, who had sort of made her way to being a more likable character, didn't fare so well in this one. Kate's story is fine, what there is of it anyway. It's mostly tangled up in Kevin's nonsense. This episode actually marks the first time that the big 3 were together in an episode. Pilgrim Rick didn't really count because that happened at the very end, and basically Randall was walking off past Kate and out of the scene. However, since Randall spent the episode literally staring off into space, there wasn't a great deal of interaction between the 3. Anyway, before I continue, I shall say that this is not a spoiler-free video, so if you don't remember the episode or haven't watched it, I highly recommend you do so and then go watch the episode, or this video rather. And if you like my channel and want to support what I do here, please subscribe to my channel. We open up in the present day with William writing a list and probably checking it twice, and 3 times, and 4 times. This is Randall after all. He hears Beth and William whispering outside the door. Randall starts to pace, and he says, "I'm upset, not deaf." Beth enters the bedroom and asks how he's doing. He says he's fine. Well, that's the most unconvincing lie I've ever heard in my entire life. Beth says, "It's been a few hours. Is he ready to talk?" And Randall very quietly says to William, and he calls to William and says that he can come in too. William enters slowly, like he's expecting to get yelled at. And he says, "I understand you're probably angry." And Randall just cuts to the chase. "When did you meet my mother?" William answers, "The day he left the hospital." He says he wanted to make sure that he was going to a good home. Randall absorbs this. He looks upset and angry. His face is tight. After a moment of silence, Randall asks, "Did my father know about you?" And William answers he never got that impression. He goes back to writing his list. And Beth asks him, "What are you doing?" And he responds that he's writing a list of the reasons that he's mad at his mother. He's up to 20 so far. And this sounds like something that I would have done when I was 7. He gets up and tells William that not to think that he forgot that he lied to him too. That he acted like he didn't remember abandoning Randall at the fire station when he first showed up to meet William. William simply replies, "I was respecting your mother's wishes." And Randall says, That's why he's only second maddest at him. And he's third maddest at his wife. And Beth is like, why are you mad at me? I was trying to get your mother to tell the truth the second I found out. And Randall responds, that's why there's not a William and Beth list. His mother is the one that betrayed him. And as soon as he's done with that list, he's going to go read it to his mother and make sure she hears every last word. We cut to the past timeline where the Pearsons are at a grocery store. The kids are running around, except for Randall, who is asking strangers who happen to be black if they can roll their tongue. They are just kind of looking at him incredulously. After his parents spot him, they ask him, what was that all about? That's not something you ask strangers. And Randall says that he learned about inherited traits in science class, and rolling of the tongue is one of them. So, if Randall happens upon a black man who can roll his tongue, maybe this man is his father. Cut to Rebecca and Jack doing dishes, talking about Randall's situation. Rebecca clearly doesn't want to talk about it, but Jack says it kills him to think that he will always have a hole not knowing who his parents are. And Rebecca's response is, we are his parents. Jack responds, you know what I mean. Rebecca is clearly getting agitated. She's scrubbing really hard at whatever dish she's working on. And Jack tells her to put the sponge down and to look at him. Gently, of course. He says that he knows this is difficult to think about, but these questions that Randall is asking are not going to go away. And he doesn't want Randall to resent them. And Rebecca basically says, resent us for what? We give him love. We give him everything that he asks for or would want. Yeah, all you have to do is ask Kevin. He'll tell you. She asks, what could he possibly be missing from us? And Jack responds, we can't roll our tongues. Only as it turns out, Rebecca actually can. We cut to the present day timeline with Kate and Kevin. Kate describes what Rebecca did as cuckoo levels insane. And Kevin says he knows, but what about her? Announcing to the family that she's going to get a gastric bypass surgery, risking her life. What's that all about? And Kate basically says, I almost died. Kevin says, you experienced some turbulence. Kate replies with, it was scary. Shut up. It was a real seize the day moment. And Kevin asks, okay, but what happened to dieting? Kate says that she's run the numbers and she would be 106 years old by the time she reached her goal. She wants to live now. And Kevin, who's incredulous, says, yeah, you sure this isn't something to do with Toby? Kate denies it. And Kate says that people have surgery all the time. It's not a big deal. And Kevin says, not a big deal? He's got like a billion big deals going on in his head. Yeah, I don't believe that, Kevin. I don't believe you have that much RAM up there. But anyway, there's Kate and what's going on with Randall and their mom selling the cabin, which is the first that Kate's heard of this. Oh, and he just had the single greatest kiss of his life. Congratulations, Kevin. Kate expresses surprise that Rebecca would sell the cabin. That was their childhood, but Kevin points out they haven't been there in years. Kate sees this as an opportunity to go now. that the big three should go up there today. And away we go. This is actually the first time that we see the cabin in this series. And as of the 5th season, the cabin has not yet been sold. So that particular plot line seems to have been dropped. In the car at the cabin, Kate says that she can't believe that their mom is selling the place. And Randall responds, "Yeah, there's a lot of can't believes right now." Kevin's talking about something completely irrelevant and makes the comment that he's living in the past. And Randall says, "Not me." Kevin tells him that he knows he's hurting, but her and Randall are going to have to make up sometime, preferably before Christmas. And Randall says, "Nope, I'm going to clear my stuff out of this cabin, hand in my keys, and then I am done." Kate sends Toby a text about being at the cabin and does not get a response. Color me not surprised. Kevin is looking at a painting or a magic eye on the wall and trying to see what it is. But he's having no luck. Eventually he thinks he sees a pirate ship. But Randall poo-poos that, saying, "It's a bear, it's always been a bear, but who knows, maybe it's not real. Just like my childhood." Okay, Randall, you're getting a little silly now. Kate calls him out on that and says, "Randall, what Mom did was insane, but that doesn't erase your entire childhood. That doesn't mean it wasn't real. Me and Kevin are real. I mean, Kevin was crappy to you and all." She doesn't say that. I'm saying that. But he was still real. And she calls him over to look at a photo album. It seems like Randall's getting into it for a second. He's smiling, and then he points out a picture of Rebecca and him and says, "Look, there's Rebecca lying to me about not knowing my biological father." Kate says she's sorry, but this is probably the last time that the three of them are going to be together at the cabin. So can we please just enjoy the day? And Randall almost seems won over by this. But then they hear somebody drive up. Kevin leaps to his feet. Kate asks, "What's that?" And Kevin says, "I'll get it." And it's Olivia and friends. Okay, here's what someone who isn't a jackass would do. If they wanted their girlfriend to come to the cabin for their trip, he would ask the other two if that was okay with them, and not just let her show up without telling them. But that's not what Kevin does here. So, for the second episode in a row, I'm going to say this a few times. Kevin is a jackass. Olivia brought a friend, and the writer of the play that they're starring in, who also sort of acts like Olivia's personal assistant. Her name is Ilana, and she's about to become a little bit more relevant. We've seen her before when Kevin was struggling with a certain scene in the play, and she's played by Sloane Sandberg. Kate is not pleased with their arrival. Inside the cabin, Olivia acts super snobbish. We cut to Kate in the kitchen, who's checking her phone for messages from Toby. She doesn't have any. Kevin joins her, and Kate tells him, "This is supposed to be our day." Kevin tells her that she told Olivia that she could come, but she didn't know that she was going to bring her playwright and some dude, which, by the way, turns out to be her ex-boyfriend. The conversation continues for a bit, and then Kate says, "I'm sorry, I love you, but sometimes I want to punch you." Oh, Kate. How I feel ya on that one. I feel that in my soul. I often feel that way about Kevin. And later she's going to call him a jackass. Kate, you had me at you want to punch him. The random guy whose name is Asher, played by Nick George, who has a very thin filmography. He only has 23 credits to his name, only one of which I would conceivably have seen him in, American Horror Story, but he was only in like one episode of that. He interrupts Kate and Kevin's conversation and puts some liquid in the refrigerator, which will turn out to be very important. Chekhov's thermos. We cut to the past timeline with Jack, Rebecca, and Yvette making her third appearance in the series, which means she only has one more to go before we don't see her again. They end up explaining their dilemma to her, and Yvette suggests that what Randall needs is a black role model. Someone that can give Randall an idea of who he can become. Back in the present day, the gang are playing a game, minus Randall, who looks like he's about to take out some trash. Kevin insists that he join the game, but Randall hears some clicking sounds, which nobody else hears. And Randall exits the building. Asher goes to the kitchen, and when he comes back, he notes that half of the liquid stuff that he brought is gone, and he wants to know who drank it. Apparently, the liquid substance contains mushrooms, and the person who drank half of it was Randall. And that must have been pretty good stuff because he kept drinking it. Well, now Randall is tripping, and when he's outside, he spots his dad cleaning the gutters. He casually says hi to him, like it's not anything unusual to say hi to your dead father. And credits. 13 minutes into this episode. Now, I stopped making note of how long the cold opens are, but 13 minutes is a really long time for a cold open in a show. When we come back, Randall is staring off into space, which is how he will spend the rest of this episode. Kate asks him if he's okay, and Kevin is like, he just drank a bunch of mushrooms. He's not okay. And Asher says, oh, he's fine. It's perfectly safe. He's having a way better time than the rest of us. Kevin asks Randall if he would like to come inside with them. And Randall says, no, Dad. I don't want to come inside. Kevin asks Kate if they have his car keys. And when she says yes, Kevin tells him, we're going to head inside. And then he takes a quick snap. Whoa, snappy? What the heck is a snappy? You know, ordinarily I would stop at this juncture and, delete the mistake I just made, but I'm going to keep it in. He takes a selfie of his tripping brother, and then they all go inside. We cut to Randall's perspective, who sees his father, Jack, cleaning out the gutters. He throws Randall something that looks kind of like a G.I. Joe and says, if the kids weren't always throwing things in the gutter, maybe it wouldn't always be broken. Randall says that they need to talk about Mom, and Jack says, yeah? And Randall tells him that Mom knew about his biological father his entire life. Jack says, what? Nah, kid, that's crazy. Now, let's take a moment and talk about Jack's appearance here. It's certainly fun to see Milo Ventimiglia and Sterling K. Brown interact because they don't usually get the opportunity to do so. But obviously, Randall is not talking to Jack unless the mushrooms somehow conjure up the ability to talk to ghosts, this is not really Jack. So Randall is really talking to himself here. His subconscious has conjured up Jack as a means to work out the problem. And this Jack responds in the way that Randall thinks that he would. What this basically means is Randall somewhere in his mind already has the answers. After a back and forth in which Jack still doesn't quite believe that she would hold on to a secret like that, because doing so would destroy her, and Randall comes back with, "Dad, I tracked him down. And Mom admitted it." Jack disappears from the scene. Just up and vanishes like a ghost. In the past timeline, we see Jack bring Randall to a karate studio comprised of black students and a black sensei. Yvette basically sent him there. And after the class is over, the sensei has Randall take off his shoes. The sensei eventually shows Randall a black karate star that he knows nothing about. That's pretty much the black equivalent of Bruce Lee. We cut from the karate studio to Rebecca and Jack at night, preparing to go to bed. Jack brings up a guy named Ian from work, who a few months back thought his wife was cheating on him, so he hired a PI. Jack's point in bringing this up is to suggest that maybe they should hire a PI to track down Randall's parents, which, funnily enough, is exactly what Randall ended up doing to find William in the first place. Rebecca is not thrilled with the idea, but Jack continues that they hire a guy. He checks out hospital records, yada yada yada, and maybe he finds the people that gave him up. And Rebecca says, "And then what? And then what are you hoping happens?" Jack gets quieter, and he goes to close the door so that maybe certain little ears will not hear, and he says he's hoping that Randall will get a better understanding of who he is. And Rebecca says, "I thought that's why you were taking him to the dojo." And Jack says, "Yeah, and that's fine, but here's the thing. At the end of the day, the other black kids in there get to go home with their black fathers. Randall only gets a couple hours. They get to grow up with a fundamental understanding of who they are." And Rebecca, who's been nothing but hostile about this, says, "He's Randall Pearson. That's who he is." And Jack says, "Yes, he's our son. He's our all-star son who deserves only the best from us, even if that means sucking up our feelings about the fact that he might have birth parents out there somewhere who can help him fill the void." Rebecca asks, "Well, what if they turn out to be drug addicts or criminals? We're going to let that person meet our son?" And Jack is basically like, "Of course not." And he asks a very basic question. Why are you against even trying? For some reason, Jack is not threatened by this concept the same way Rebecca is. And part of the answer to Jack's question is that she already knows where William is. Of course, she can't say that. Her entire thing here is completely based on fear. She fears losing her son. We cut to Rebecca knocking on the door of the place that used to be William's. And thankfully, or not so much, depending on your perspective or hers, he's there. He's once again played by Jeremiel Nakia. At first, he doesn't recognize her, but eventually it clicks in his mind who she is. He never really expected to see her again. In the present-day timeline, Olivia and Kate have a scene that I'm not really going to spend too much time covering. The basic point here is that Kate has a fear that losing all the weight, either through dieting or the gastric bypass surgery, might not end up changing anything for her. And it's a solid point. Just because you stop drinking or stop doing drugs, or in this case, lose weight, does not mean that you've solved the problem that got you there in the first place. There's still plenty of other work to do. So no, Kate just losing the weight is the beginning and not the end of that journey. Cut to Randall, who finds Ghost Dad working with tools. Jack says that he gave Randall everything. That he gave him a loving family, a private school, black influences so that he could understand himself better. And you know, Jack is a great deal more hostile here than I think he really would be if he were having this conversation. But again, this isn't really Jack. And Randall says, and all I was supposed to do was feel grateful. Grateful that I had parents that wanted me and loved me, unlike the parents that abandoned me. And Randall says, the truth is, you guys never wanted me either. I was just a replacement for your dead son. And Jack responds in the way that I think Jack would actually respond. And the way Randall thinks he would respond. And Randall interrupts him and says, I spent my life striving for perfection. And you want to know why? Because I always felt that if I let up for one moment, I might remember that I was unwanted. Randall turns to walk away. But Jack is on the other side of him now, like something out of a horror movie, except here it's not played for horror. Though Randall almost acts like it is. Jack tells him to stop, and he grabs the back of his neck. In a loving way, of course, not in a I'm going to kill you kind of way. I perhaps characterized that the wrong way. He tells him, the moment I saw you, I knew that you were my boy. You weren't a choice, Randall. You were a fact. You were never a replacement son. Do you understand? Through tears, Randall says, if I had known that the man who abandoned me regretted it and wanted me back, that would have made all the difference in the world. Well, you know that now, Randall. Does it make all the difference now? Jack sympathetically says, I'm sorry she lied to you. We can't change that. So what do you want now? And Randall says, I want her to suffer as much as I do. And honest to God, Randall, I think right now she is suffering as much as you are. Maybe not in the same way, but she is definitely suffering. We cut to the past timeline with Rebecca and William. William is doing much better. He's been clean for 5 years. And William says that he's been working at a music shop, cleaning in the back room. William asks, how is Kyle? And Rebecca responds, we actually renamed him, Randall. And I'm pretty sure. Then how is Randall doing? And Rebecca says that he's really smart. He's great at science and math. And he's a really sweet kid. Jack was away on a trip once, and Randall cuddled up next to her. Not because he was scared, but because she knew she would miss his dad. William says that he spent the last 9 years wondering if he had done the right thing. But he didn't even know Rebecca's last name to look her up in the phone book. William, starting to get a little teary-eyed, says, it seems right, though. For him. Rebecca finally reveals the real reason that she's there. She tells him, as a tear drops down her face, that Randall has been asking about his father, that he wants to meet him. And William starts to get excited. He says, "My boy wants to meet me?" And William suggests, "Maybe you can bring him by the store sometime." And he starts to get really, really excited, which I think scares Rebecca. William gets up because he wants to show Rebecca something. And Rebecca gets spooked. She was almost brave. Almost. But when the chips were down, she couldn't quite do it. And while William is looking around for whatever it is he's looking for, Rebecca takes off. Eventually, she will send him a letter with the picture saying that that William can't meet Randall because he already has an amazing father that will sacrifice for him. And this is the very letter that Randall himself will eventually end up reading. And the first time when these two met and they made the deal that William would stay out of Randall's life, I couldn't judge that decision as right or wrong. But here I have to say that what Rebecca does here is terrible. It's selfish, but it's perfectly human. It's completely based on fear. The fear of losing her son. It's absolutely awful, but it's understandable. We cut back to when Jack initially asked the question, "Why are you so against trying?" And Rebecca gives an answer. Her true fear is, what if they are great? What if they want to take Randall away from us? And Jack dismisses that. They won't be taking Randall away from us. He is legally our son. But Rebecca asks, well, what if they have some rights? Honestly, I don't see how. He was abandoned at a fire station. How could William possibly have rights to his kid at this point? And honestly, I don't think William would do that. But nevertheless, this is Rebecca's fear. She tells Jack, "I cannot lose my son. I can't." Cut to the past timeline where Kate is calling Toby, and Toby actually picked up the phone. Kate is telling Toby about the experience they're having at the cabin, about Kevin's girlfriend. Toby listens for a while, makes a joke, but then is like, are we still broken up? And Kate is like, well, yeah. And Toby's like, then I can't be this person for you anymore. I'm sorry. And hangs up the phone. And then we have a scene where Kevin, Olivia, and Asher are watching home videos of Kevin and Kate as kids. Asher and Olivia are acting chummy, and especially they're kind of acting like they're boyfriend and girlfriend. They're cuddling up and she's feeding him, and eventually Kevin has had enough. He ends up accusing Olivia of not having ever experienced anything real in her life, which is funny because that's the exact same thing that Olivia accused him of the first time they met. Olivia takes that as her cue for the two of them to leave. And they do so without Sloane. By the way, earlier I kind of slipped up. I called the character the actor's name. The actual character's name is Sloane Sandberg. And once again, I'm going to leave that mistake in just for your viewing pleasure. Kevin eventually finds Kate in the woods. And he asks her how mad she is at him. And the answer is pretty mad. We already cover the conclusion she came up with about her gastric bypass surgery, and the fact that Her losing the weight might not change anything. And Kevin responds, all the more reason that you shouldn't do it, because it's dangerous. Cut to Randall, who's hallucinating the family playing games at the cabin. Randall is basically yelling at Rebecca, who doesn't hear him. But that doesn't prevent him from trying. Randall finds himself outside the cabin, back with Jack. And Jack says, do you feel better yelling at her? And Randall says, no, because she couldn't care less. And Jack says, come on. You're a parent, Randall. You know things are not that simple. Jack tells him that maybe he's looking at things the wrong way. And Randall snaps back, what other way is there to look at it? And Jack says, relax your eyes and look through it. Meaning through the happy family life that is going on here. And we see Rebecca in the cabin, freaking out, because she lives her life in fear. Constantly afraid. Jack says she had 3 wildly different kids, all with their own sets of problems. Our marriage wasn't always perfect. I sure wasn't. But she had her own things to deal with too. But she kept everything out. She always made sure that we were all safe. The next time we see Randall, he's clearing out the gutter like his father once did. And he discovers a couple of toys up there, some G.I. Joe looking figures. And one of them resembles the toy that Jack tossed him at nearly the beginning of the episode. Kate comes into Kevin's room and basically finds him sleeping with Sloane, who got stranded there. Because Kevin needs to sleep with everyone. Kate and Kevin eventually find Randall fixing the gutter. He's back to normal after his little trip. And I just got it. The title of the episode doesn't necessarily refer to the trip to the cabin, but Randall's little mushroom trip. Wow, that only took me, forever to realize. Kate says, hey, you can't be so mad at your mom if you're fixing the gutters for her. And Randall responds, I'm not doing it for Mom. I'm doing it for Dad. We cut to the past timeline, where Randall is at karate class, and Randall is having an initiation, which Jack is participating in. He is asked to lay on the ground, while Randall lays on top of him. And he essentially does push-ups, while Randall is laying across him. And I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. I don't even think I'd be able to get off the ground in that position. I'm barely able to do a push-up without a 9-year-old kid on my back. But this symbolizes Jack being Randall's foundation, his strength, his protector, who will guide him in life and show him the way. And over this, we hear Rebecca's letter to William, saying that he can't see Randall, that he can't meet him because he has an amazing father. We once again cut to the conversation with Jack and Rebecca, where she insists that the two of them have to be enough for Randall. We cut to the final scene of the episode, where Randall shows up at Rebecca's door. Randall says, I have written this list of all the reasons why you have destroyed me by keeping William a secret from me for 36 years. But then, Randall doesn't read it. He simply says after a pause, you kept that secret for 36 years. That must have been lonely. And Rebecca breaks down into tears, because Randall is forgiving her, or at least showing that he will in time. She moves to hug him, but Randall steps away, and he says, not now. I'll see you for Christmas. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. Now, as I said at the beginning, the Randall stuff in this episode is very strong. The past timeline scenes were very good. Everything else, though, was very kind of blah for me. But still, the good stuff outweighs the bad for me. So, I'll say this is another very good episode. Just somewhat marred by some of the other stuff going on. So it's not quite up to the general standards of the best episodes of this series. Anyway, that is all I have for you guys for this video. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow my Twitter at coreproductions.com. You can join my Facebook group at Corman Productions. You can buy Corman Productions products at the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. And of course, you can like, share this video, and subscribe to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.